Hi, Forrest. I'm so delighted to be with you today. Thank you so much for joining us on the Everyday Mystic.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, it's an honor to be with you too. And I guess that's what I am so blessed about in this show is that I get to be with people who are like-hearted, like as well as like-minded, who are sharing in this really expansive journey of life outside of the 3D, life not just within the normal frame of human experience, but in the expanded frame, multidimensional frame of the human experience and get to have these really cool conversations. So I was so happy when someone on your team or someone that you work with reached out to me because I didn't know about you, but then I watched an interview that you did and I was just like, this is my man. I loved everything you shared and especially loved where it came from, coming from the heart. And I felt that so deeply when you were sharing that you were coming straight from that place of love. So thank you so much for joining us. And before we get started in like diving deep into, philosophical discussion and conversation, because this is a show about mysticism, and about connecting to the divine and about this expanded consciousness. Tell us a little bit about how you got here. Were you raised this way to think and feel and be and act in this way? Or is this something that was a adult discovery of yours?
Well, thank you, first of all. That feels like feels really warm to be welcomed into your show this way. So thank you very much. It's nice being
You're
here.
welcome.
And yeah, I mean, the most honest answer I can say in this moment is that my journey got kicked off when my dad was diagnosed with cancer when I was 19 years old. I can go back in my childhood and see traces of other things. And there was a certain oomph or a certain realness or timeliness that came online when my father got sick. It was like it kickstarted my first existential crisis of what in the world is life about. And
Mhm.
of course, we start diving down rabbit holes in books and YouTube videos, and all roads lead to Rome, right? It's like no matter what theme you study, whether it's math or philosophy or physics or whatever, ultimately you're going to hit source, right? We're ultimately going to find the ground of all being and the source from which all of manifestation and all these different fields of study arise from. And so I have had a number of journeys in different realms in what feels like a short life. I mean, I'm currently 32 years old, and yeah, I have had several different awakening journeys, which I could speak to, several different kinds of healing journeys, which I could speak to, existential crises, these kind of things. Uh,
Mhm.
but there was a real felt sense of having outgrown the story that I was given and the story that I grew up in, and opening into a bigger sense of self, a bigger sense of what experience actually is, our relationship with reality, and yeah, that's a little bit of how Forrest
Yeah.
has gotten here.
So you were really facing death, your father's death or potential death. Did he pass from that or did he recover?
Yeah, he passed a few days after I turned 24, and that
Mm.
was an even more intense initiation of sorts. I mean, I eulogized my father at his funeral, and I was meditating consistently at that point in my life on who would come to my funeral and what would they say about my life, and what kind of impact would the life that I have, the life that I led, have had for people. And when I first started this practice. I mean, I can remember being in college and reading Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I'm pretty sure it's habit 2 is begin with the end in mind, and he invites you to do an exercise of visualizing your own funeral and who's there and what do they say. And the first time I read this chapter, I threw the book at the wall. It triggered me so much. I got so upset, and
Wow.
it was really a call from my spirit to get real about how I was showing up in my life was not in integrity with the deeper core of who I am and who we are. There was a lot of posturing, and there was a lot of wounding and pain and things that I was acting out and performing in a lot of ways. And so doing this exercise just completely uh, jump started a daily practice for me of sitting with my own death and what people might say. And that really rerouted my life and what I chose to do with my time and what I prioritized and these kind of things for sure.
How beautiful is that, and how powerful the reflections on death can be to change how you live and actually live from a different place in that reflection. So you started reflecting, you started asking big questions, all of the big ones like who am I, why am I here, what are we here for, what is this life all about? And then did you explain, or I guess describe for us what that was like for you? I mean, you described this throwing a book at the wall because of a trigger, maybe a resistance towards this opening to a new path and a new life. But then after that resistance, and you got past the resistance, how did things flow for you? What was it that helped you and guided you into a more open place?
Yeah, so I just want to name, I have a sense that we're exploring a trajectory in this conversation that I've never explored publicly before. So I'm here and I'm going, oh, this is really cool. I have a sense that I'm going to share things I've never shared or touch into things I've never touched into. And there's a potential, I'm not sharing things I've shared, so they're not as formed up. So I'm going to do my best to be concise and clear, and we'll see
Yeah,
where this.
sounds good. Thank you for saying that. And obviously, if there's anything that you are uncomfortable or it doesn't feel right to share because you've never, then and please, honor your own boundaries. But I'm excited then for
Yeah,
where this
yeah.
will go.
Oh,
Okay, floor is yours.
I feel wide open. I'm just more mindful of the listeners and wanting you to have somewhat of a coherent experience. So let's see. uh, yeah. So I mean, uh, there's a little bit of emotion here for me. In my college years were quite a bit of alcohol and drug consumption years. I really was in a lot of pain from my childhood that I had not processed whatsoever. And my father and I had a challenging relationship when I was growing up, quite difficult. And so it was a real war inside myself when he got sick, because I realized the man who I hate actually I love, and how do I be with this huge split in me of here's this person I just can't stand and don't get along with, and now he gets sick and he's going to die, and something cracks open in me and goes, oh my god, I actually do love this person, which of course I always knew deep down, and on the more surface level I was acting out wounds and pain and these kind of things. So the the process for me that kicked off, and of course there's so many different variables that go into an unfolding like this, is starting to turn towards that pain as the nourishment for our continued evolution and growth and healing and becoming. So there there has been a challenge for me as as a young person getting off the ground of, you're 19 years old or you're 23 years old. My father died a few days after I turned 24, even up into my late 20s, where there was like I had this experience of almost like failure to launch. It was like I was trying to get a rocket ship off the ground, but there was this deep, deep anchor pulling me down into the depths of my being. So trying to get a startup off the ground or trying to get some kind of vision for the world off the ground, and then having this anchor pulling deeper, and that anchor being the invitation for healing, that anchor being the invitation to grieve and to go down into the depths of my being, um, and really let go of the identity I was pretending to be when I was flying a rocket ship, and sink deeper in, into something else.
And that's something else of your discovery. How would you describe that? And I know it may not be easy to do in a few words, but however many words you need to take, how would you describe what that something else is?
Oof, I notice I feel vulnerable saying this. Um, there was like a tiny little contraction in my chest of like, oof, a little bit of shyness. I'm just breathing for a moment. Um, yeah, well, it's like the experience that I have had is becoming more fully resourced from and oriented from what I would call our true nature, or some people call source or the divine. There's tons of words to describe um, that which is beyond. And I've had several experiences of in my life of, like, I'm using air quotes right now, but returning home, like home with a capital H. And after those experiences, there's actually been a process of orienting more and more and more from home, orienting more and more from the divine. So there's uh, yeah, letting go of everything that's not the truth of who we are, to open up and embody more fully.
It's so much sifting, isn't it? So
Yeah.
I find that the journey is less about where you end up, because where you end up is exactly where you always were or were meant to be. And so that's simple. It's like, oh, just remembering who I am and being back where I always have been. But the journey is complex because it's like navigating and sifting through all the conditioning and the programming and the veils and the illusions that have been set up, right? And that we've become. But like you said, you're performing that forest person, or I was performing as Carissa in those ways with that dance. So it's like someone else was creating the puppet show and then you became the puppet, versus you realizing, oh, there's no there's no show. Like, there's no, we're not a character in a show. We're just here to be. But it's like getting through all of that illusion is the sifting and sorting of the journey that tends to take quite a long time. But I like to say that or share that because it's so, like, paradoxically is contrasted with the simplicity of being. Like, once you actually feel it and you're there, like, oh, okay. This isn't complicated. This isn't, there's nothing to figure out really. And so I'm just this. And this is beautiful. Do you find that to be true? That it's kind of this like dance between that simplicity and complexity of the maybe the life versus the being?
Yeah, what you're sharing resonates for sure. Yeah.
So when you're, as far as you moving through these phases and you're in your 20s and you're realizing big things, realizing that you're not, maybe your parents' son. You're not this dude that creates startups. You're not, a drinker or a drug taker or whatever, all the things that you may have identified with before. What were some of your, let's call them, light posts or guideposts that were drawing you towards what you really are? Like, was it certain readings, certain teachers, certain practices that showed you that way?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many friends on the journey, right, in the form of books and friends and advisors and guides and spirits, and I just could go on and on and on.
Mm,
And to name a few that have been particularly impactful, one is Kim Barda, who's the co-founder of Stages International, and he really supported me in doing both my depth work and shadow work, right?
mm,
The trauma work, shadow work, depth work processes, and also simultaneously supported me in mm, stabilizing in later stage perspectives, for a lack of, like, yeah, I'm not sure another way to put it. So yeah, supporting me in the evolutionary and awakening process, and becoming more grounded, and stable and resourced from a different place.
mhm,
So that's one. Uh, there's been so many transformational communities that I've participated in, and all kinds of trainings, and friends who I've had. I've convened and facilitated so many communities over the years where we get together and practice presence and be in questions together, sit in the inquiry together, and wonder about life and the experience we're having.
mhm. So now that you've kind of answered these big existential questions in your life, what are some of the present moment big questions that you've been asking?
I don't know if I'm in any big questions right now. A lot of my practice right now is like a releasing process and a letting go. Spending a lot of waking life sitting down or lying down and just breathing. And there's a lot of
Mm,
just like big releases, and sometimes the body will start convulsing a little bit, like shaking out, tremors or neuromyofascial holding patterns,
mhm,
traumas, subtle traumas. There's a just a deeper de-evolution process, going deeper and deeper down into the cells, like into the body, into cells, into DNA, into
mm,
quantum material, like from an involution experience, going back down as deep as possible. So there's a lot of, yeah, releasing, right? Like on the awakening side of things, we can make things so complex and take perspectives on perspectives and construct all kinds of meta models and meaning making systems. And even when we know it's all empty and illusion, we can play with all these things. And that has really given way in the last couple of years to a process of sinking in and letting go and releasing, and yeah, dropping just deeper and deeper into stillness
mm.
and being. And yeah, I could share more, but I'll pause here. Yeah.
That's probably why I resonated so much with you because I've been in the exact same experience this last few
Yeah.
years, shedding, letting go, shaking, releasing, deepening, and finding myself in that beautiful, still, peaceful place.
Mm,
And when I say still and peaceful, maybe you can reflect on this too. I don't mean to say this place of inaction. Like there's so much going on there.
totally, totally.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, I see you agree.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's fun because I think when you maybe just think about it and haven't experienced it, or if you hear about that kind of practice of stillness or getting into a place of stillness, peace, and calm, one of the things that I think I rejected about this from a subconscious level is that I needed a lot of activity in my life to distract me from my pain, and doing all the things to create, right, all of that, all over the place distraction activity. So I avoided this place because even though I wanted it so desperately, I
Yeah,
thought, oh, well, it's going to be boring. And it's going
yeah,
to be, this place of just like, what am I just doing? You're just sitting there. You're sitting around doing nothing. And that is like the absolute farthest from the truth,
right.
right? There's so much incredible activity. So since you agree with me, and since you're at least you have this same experience, tell us a little bit about, like, what are some of the things that you actively do in that place of stillness, calmness, or not if do, but experience or be.
Yeah, I mean, first I just want to speak to the I don't know, fixation that we have with stimulation, because I sure as heck know that in my experience. And I love that you said the like it can be so much when we really start to get still. There can be so much that wants to come up and be felt, and that we're called to be present with. So I really feel my love for self and for everyone listening, and like I just want to name how supportive it can be to get some physical touch while we breathe through everything, right? When we really start breathing through the whole body, and then out
Yeah.
into the room and out through all of creation, right? Out through the universe, when we really start to open up and breathe through totality, and be breathed, right, as part of an interconnected whole. There's just so much. I mean, the body's going from being this solid, separate thing I call forest to the whole universe. Like
Mm.
everything that's manifest, everything that's yet manifest, that becomes, the body in a way. And
Yeah.
there's just so much information to be present to. There's so much happening in the interconnected whole. So I just it can be a lot for any of us to be with. So I want to name that as like, um yeah, like there's always been a desire for me for more friends and like camaraderie in these experiences. And
Mhm.
I don't know if that's just where we are in this particular moment in space and time. Like I fantasize about a world where when you're starting to open up to these when you're starting to have these awakenings, that there'll be these places you can go, like Airbnbs for healing, or transition homes, where when you're really like letting go of what you used to be identified as to open up to a new way of being, that people who've gone through the process can hold you and midwife you through the experience,
Mm.
having traversed the territory themselves. So I just want to name all that with love, and also, yeah, to well, I'll answer your question, but before I do that, let me pause and see, is there anything you want to I just want to check in with you after sharing this.
I know nothing to ask, but I think I'll reflect back how beautiful that is to want to and to envision, and I do as well, this vision of um, that process of dueling to some degree people through this awakening, because it's not, I mean, the Matrix got a lot of things right as a movie of like what it feels like to
Oh,
awaken when Neo like is like, what the fuck? And like all the tubes come out. He's like, oh, you know,
yeah. And he gets
I think that
flushed down the toilet and like
yeah, just like what happened? What is this? And that stark alone feeling too that you feel in that scene of like, oh, he's just there by himself and there's just all those pods. And um so I think that that is very true for, you know, as many people as we are. There are way more many people who are living out the, let's just call it the 3D experience, or your sort of typical status quo human experience. And so when you're going through something like this, it can be not only jarring but alienating, right? And knowing that there are people out there like you and me and all the countless other, every guest, single guest I've spoken to, every pretty much, you know, the community that I've built and gathered over the years, who I can have these conversations with, smaller, you know, as a group than the thousands of other people that I've interacted with in my life, but such a potent and powerful group. And so, what it takes then for someone awakening, somebody coming to this, is to trust that the right person's going to show up. They're going to hear the right podcast. They're going to see the and pick up the right book. They're going to meet the right person, like bump into Forrest at a cafe in Costa Rica and be like, oh, right. They'll be
totally,
guided. And I
totally.
fully 100% trust that. That's been my experience and like the experience of countless others, right? That as soon as we open and awaken, it may feel immediately scary, but as long as you have the courage to kind of stay open, everything comes to you. You just like, you like suck it in like a vortex, like, oh, the right books, teachers, places, people, experiences, all of that. So, um, a place that brings all of that together to where, and it could be a beautiful beacon and place for people to unfold, would be gorgeous. And I love it and I support it and let's do it. So now go on.
Yeah. Well, I love that you've brought in the Matrix as a pop culture reference because this is so relatable. A lot of us have seen this movie, and there's a couple scenes in the movie that really stick out to me when you ask about, you know, what happens after. And one which isn't hardly ever talked about, but it strikes me so intensely, which is when Neo's lying on the table and he has an acupuncture needle in like every single part of his body. He's
Yeah.
just covered in acupuncture needles, and I resonate so deeply with that scene. It's like going through, like, there's a lot of kinds of awakening, and I think that a lot of times when we talk about spiritual awakenings, we're kind of missing each other because there's different kinds of awakenings, you know, like we're talking about
Mhm.
different things, thinking we're talking about the same thing. But I'll just say that in my experience, there have been moments where it's like, have I even ever used my body in my entire life? Like everything feels so atrophied, and
Mm.
um there's this thing of like every single cell in the body is waking up, right? It's like when we go from being this concept of who we think we are, and we become aware that's just a story we've been living in, and all of a sudden our awareness wakes up, and every single aspect of our being and every single cell and every single mitochondria and every single neural network and myelin sheath and everything is turning on and waking up. It's like this experience of cosmic acupuncture, right? It's like the whole system's getting booted up, and for most of us, you know, there's oftentimes quite a bit of trauma work we need to do. There's shadow work we need to do to reintegrate parts of ourselves from our childhood. So we got all that going on, and then to keep the Matrix movie reference, then you sit down in the computer chair. And I'm telling you what, I remember the first time that this happened, that I started, there was about 4 months that I was on my back in 2019 before COVID. I broke my leg surfing, which I could talk about. It was a huge soul
Mm.
initiation. I mean, a massive one of the most intense initiations I ever had, if not the most intense. But I remember lying down on my back, and I was, um, I had to be quite focused because I needed to heal my leg. Right, my body said it didn't want surgery, so I needed to figure out how to heal a broken leg without having surgery, and uh, that took quite a bit of, like, okay, I can't numb out or get distracted or watch Netflix. Like, I need to be here and discover how's healing going to happen in this body. Otherwise, I'm never going to be able to walk again. Right. So that this
Mm.
was a really intense experience. But I remember lying on the couch, and it was like my head flew backwards so fast. It was almost like something took over and threw my head back. And I was like, and I'm lying down with my head back like this, looking up, and I go, I swear to God, I'm in the same exact position as all those people were in those chairs in the Matrix when you got the thing plugged in the back of your neck. And I'm just lying there with just downloads pouring into my body.
Mm.
I mean, I'm seeing humanity and the evolution of matter into life, and this evolution of our species for hundreds of thousands of years, and what's going on the planet, and the ecosystems and the rainforests, and what's going to be here in 10,000 years, and just like dumping into me and dumping into me and dumping into me and dumping
Mm.
into me. Like, I'm just lying there. And it's like, how do you integrate all that, right? Like, how do you get up? And this was just all day, every day for months, just program after program, zip file. I call them zip files, zip
Yeah.
file after zip file of just unzipping one after another after another. So that's another Matrix movie scene that people could use. Is like, it's a legitimate experience that now is all day, everyday thing. I mean, you and I, we're sitting right here right now, and these conversations are practically just downloads. We're just like things are
Receiving.
yeah, we're just receiving. It's just coming through, right? So that it kind of takes over as a whole way of walking through the world.
That's right. It is. It was a change of operating system
Hmm.
in the
Hmm.
awakening, into one of receiving that kind of divine messaging and channeling and being able to actually take information that I mean, in a practical sense, you have no idea where it's coming from, but in like a felt sense, you know exactly where it's coming from. You're just like, oh, this is so real and more real than reality, right? It becomes more real. I love that you shared that. And, for I've shared this before, maybe on this podcast or when I've guested on someone else's, but I had a similar experience when I was 16, and my major accident was a head injury, and I had a fractured skull, traumatic brain injury, and so I was laid up at home recovering for months, and I had to be sitting up. So I literally was in that matrix chair position because my bed was like a hospital bed. It had to be at a 45-degree angle because my cerebral spinal fluid would leak out of my skull if I was
Wow.
down. So I had to be up like that, but inclined so that at least there was, some relaxation going on. And it had happened in the hospital first, but then continued when I got home, this complete opening and awakening to this channeled experience where in the hospital, it was and I called it an entity then, but because I didn't know that it was just me, it was my soul. But I've now discovered it was me. It was my soul speaking through me to the hospital staff. And it was speaking on behalf of me. It was my advocate because I'm 16. I'm scared. I don't know what's going on. And I also didn't have a voice. I didn't, in my regular, quote unquote, regular life, I was so silenced. I had no idea how to speak my wants and my needs and my desires and my hurts and my pains. And so I was so like in my regular life, I was shut down. to be able to speak the most important things. So my soul came through me and was just like, I'm talking to you, doc,
Yeah, yeah.
and just advocated for me. So I witnessed that, and I'm just witnessing that for 2 weeks in intensive care. And then when I got home, I was open and I fully downloaded how to heal and how and what to do, and just channeled these experiences of mine weren't as, what I would say, transpersonal or universal maybe as yours. They were a lot tied to my own life and my own being, and I mean the nature of reality too to some degree, but it was wild. And I knew, and I would just say to I know in every ounce of my being that I'm going to be 100% healed. That I had no doubt whatsoever. And it wasn't like I was, you know, telling myself that so that I would not have doubt. It just, I literally had no doubt, right?
Yeah.
Because it was fully channeled, fully downloading in me. So I so relate to you on that. Oh man, what an incredible, I mean, it is a gift, right? We were handed these gifts with these accidents. Even though I don't wish an accident on anybody, there can be incredible, it is an incredible opportunity to initiate if you are open to it. Because I think either of us probably could have shut down in that moment, right? Could have been
I mean,
like, what the?
it's crazy how real reality gets. Like, it's and it's so interesting because we're it's like we're walking around and this is what's so paradoxical, right? It's like, oh wow, this is like when you get it, you go like, oh, it's when you get it, the Matrix, and you're not getting it like this is an idea, like, oh, I see the movie, reality's like this. It's like, no, you wake up and you're like, holy crap, movie theater, like really
Yeah.
get it. You're like, you're like, whoa, like this is all
Yeah.
this is all a manifestation of the mind. Like, whoa, this is crazy. Um, Not just conceptualizing it, but really, really get it.
Mhm.
Really get it. And at the same time, somehow in this illusionary construct, things can get so real, right? It's like it's a total illusion and also so real. And I just remember being in the hospital bed and the doctor looking at me and saying, like, if so, we need to put you under anesthesia to reset your leg. And if something goes wrong with the anesthesia, we just poke a hole in your neck and stick a tube in you so you'll be able to breathe the rest of your life. And it was like my whole system just almost jumped, like my whole body almost jumped up out of the hospital bed and was like, no, you can't put me under anesthesia. You've got to reset my leg sober, right? Like I'm not
Mm.
not going under. Yeah, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? It's going to be painful. Like, we got to talk this out. And then my
Yeah.
body's saying no to surgery. Like, we're not doing this. And it's things get so real. And it's like you said, I was surrounded by fear. My doctors, friends, family members, everybody's going, Forrest, if you don't get surgery, you're never going to walk again. You might lose your leg, right? Like you've got a spiral fracture, you got a in your fibula, you got a break in your tibia, like all kinds of things are going on. Like, don't you care about your body? Don't you care about your leg? I'm going, yeah, and my leg's already healed. I'm just being the space where that healing can unfold through manifest form. And this is not a positive affirmation, which I really appreciate the distinction you're making. This is not a positive affirmation. This is not wishful thinking. This is not positive psychology or trying to trick something or tell a good story. This is a deep, deep, unfuckwithable knowing. I want to make this distinction for people. This is explicitly not law of attraction and the secret and saying positive things to feel better or tricking yourself. It's the exact opposite of tricking yourself. It's the most real, honest, true thing that could possibly be said in the moment, pouring through with there's nothing else but thisness. Nothing other than thisness, with just
Yes.
that's all.
Mhm. Oh, yes. So your conviction, your belief, your knowing was of the degree that you then went with like a resetting without anesthesia and then a
Yeah.
going home and just getting the downloads and healing and or like yeah, I love the way you put it that you are already healed. You were just now waiting for that your body to catch up to it.
Yeah, I had a mystical experience in the hospital. I literally had the thought. Okay, I had this thought when after this engagement with the doctor happened. I had a thought of, okay, I gotta have a Joe Dispenza moment right now. That was the thought I had. I was like, I gotta somehow something's got to give here because things were going sideways and fast. Like several things. There's quite a long story here, but several things
Mm,
were really going off. The one thing I'll say is the night before I was sitting with a friend and I said the words out loud. My soul does not want me to go to Austin,
mm.
Texas. I was in California at the time.
Okay.
Uh, I don't know if I didn't hear that or if I just wasn't paying attention or whatever. But I got up the next morning and I was like, I'm just going to go to Austin and figure it out. I bought a flight and went to go surfing with a friend before the flight and had this massive injury. And it was
Wow.
like, things are going like I'm not not listening, right?
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
the I had the and there was an experience of the paramedics dragged me out of the ocean and they said, how much pain are you in? And I'm like 0. And they start pumping pain medication in my arm. And I'm going, something's really wrong. Like I said, my soul doesn't want to go back to Austin. I bought a flight. I've broken my leg. People are giving me pain medicine when I say I don't need pain medicine.
Yeah.
And then I get to the hospital and the doctor's like, hey, if no, 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 if this goes wrong, we're going to poke a hole in your neck. And there was just the moment of like, enough. All of this has to stop right this second. Like,
Hmm.
this has to stop. And
Hmm.
so there was just like a total surrender into like, I can't figure anything out. I can't do this by myself. I have totally got to like let go and let something far more wiser and intelligent take over here because this ain't working.
All
and uh,
right.
and then I took my consciousness into my leg, lying in
Mm,
the hospital bed, and I saw my light body, and at the core of my body, that my leg had broken open. And so, like, at the depth of who I am, I was already healed. And then there
mhm.
were these little elves that were hammering on my leg to bring things back together. And they're like, hey, man, you got to get out of here. Like, go away. But I came out of that experience and the download was so clear, like, this is already healed. Don't go in there and have surgery and mess up the process. There are natural healing forces at work. I got elves in there working on my leg. I know
Little
I sound
healing elves.
I might sound crazy to some people saying this stuff, but wasn't on any psychedelics. Just pure sober conscious experience. Um, and yeah, and so then it was, I went back to my childhood home and I spent 4 months lying on the couch,
Mm,
bringing my awareness into my leg and literally feeling the bones in my leg come back into alignment. And I'm not kidding you. If I had, I mean, the girl I was dating at the time, we broke up. The friends who I was living with, we weren't hanging out anymore. They mailed me all my stuff. All the clients I had for my business gone. I mean, my entire existence just
mm,
was done. Like it was just everything that I was before this injury was over. And then I'm sitting there, and it was like, if I had any moments where I talked to someone, it's like, oh, if I say the honest thing, I'm going to lose this person, and I sort of contracted in fear, my leg would come out of alignment. It was like I could
mm,
literally feel moment by moment in interactions if I was not in capital A alignment, if I was not like, this is the truth in this moment, period, my leg was like the heuristic for that. And so I'm
yeah.
lying there going, crap, like I have to be completely honest 100% for this leg to come back into alignment. This is the practice that's happening here. Man, I feel so crazy saying this out loud, but I this is tender stuff for me. And so I literally was lying there on the couch, keeping my awareness in my leg, interfacing with reality, with whatever phone call it was or whatever, and experiencing that the degree to which I was honest was the degree to which the healing was going to take place.
Mm,
And down, like you said, downloading this whole new way of being. I mean, I remember like the chant, like when I said these downloads start coming in, initially they were coming in and I couldn't, it was like it kind of stopped here at the bottom of my face. So I would pull out a video camera and the downloads would come in and I would share what was coming into me and capture it on video camera. And then I would go and like my website started as me doing that. And then I would
Mm.
go back and I would play the video and I would type up all the stuff that I said. This was before we had, well, there was probably some transcription service, but anyway. So I would type up all the stuff that I said. And then I would go, okay, that's built. And then I'd sit down again and I would channel in a new video. And then I would take that and I'd build out new stuff. And this was a process for creation. And then the more I did this and the more I sat present with it, that capacity sunk down deeper into the body. So then at some point, it got all the way down through the arms into the hands. So then I could get it and type it in real time. I didn't have to record a video and then go back and transcribe the video. I could just get it out. And then over more months and more months, got all the way down. A lot of stuff to get through in the hips. That's super challenging. Down to the legs, down into the feet, down to the ground. But it's like this, the light just pours into us. Like I had this experience of clear light, which is what we are, right? Like you said, I didn't realize it's what we are. At first, I'm the human being who has this light coming into me. And then you realize, holy crap, we're actually that light coming into the human. And it's clearing out everything that's not the light. It's coming through every nook and crevice of our body and being and bucketing out everything that isn't the truth, everything that isn't the truth of who we are, everything that isn't that light.
I feel it happening right now as you speak it, and that's what's so powerful about words and connecting. So I'm so happy that you did the videos and the transcription, and even as you speak it now, I feel the experience of it. Um, so it's an important element to our journeys that we connect into words that inspire these experiences, right? That sometimes they'll happen spontaneously, like they did to you, like they did to me, like they do to many others who've had, this mystical awakening moments. And even with people who do it assisted with psychedelics and things, like you have this experience. But I like to share with people that even through words, and even, I mean, more, not just even through words, but like it was the first way and means of spell casting where we actually could speak into somebody, and people could read when there was writing, but before that, speak into somebody words that would change their experience, that they would have an actual experience from that. And that is such a beautiful way for us as humans to connect and communicate, or, it's maybe what communication is all about at least its, spiritual core, that we are doing this for one another. But then that tells me too that we're also doing potentially the opposite to one another when we're not conscious of our
Mm.
words and what we speak to one another. And then therefore what that opens up or closes up probably more accurately in people. So thank you so much for sharing that beautiful
Mm.
download, your own, and then, and invoking mine, and probably that for listeners too. After that initiation, were you changed in the sense of, because you said girlfriend gone, friends gone, clients gone, was it then like new chapter or new book completely at that point? You were reinventing or starting a new life once you were healed?
Yes, and this is such a great question because we in my I was about to say we have to. My invitation is to be the space where that new life can arise. This is one of the things that I feel like we really haven't quite gotten yet in the transformational world right now, is we have some big release like that, and then all of a sudden people say we need affirmations or set intentions. What is it you want to make manifest? It, in my experience, I'll just speak for myself, is so much more powerful to not do that, because the ego construct that would be doing all that is getting dissolved and melting away into that light as well. And
Mm.
so if we can be the space, just be the space and let the light breathe and nurture the light and let the light do its thing, an entire new reality, an entire new existence, an entirely new trajectory will come online from the space. It emerges out of nothing. It comes from the unmanifest into form without an intention-based manifestation.
Mm-hmm. Going back to the surrendering and receiving, right? Rather than the doing. I mean, the creation sounds very active, like, oh, you do something, you create. But what I'm hearing you say is that creation is essentially the byproduct of welcoming in our true nature, our soul self, welcoming in the light, and then allowing to unfold what is into the reality here. And that allowance or allowing is this creative unfolding. It just, it's like a beautiful, like you don't have to tell a flower how to, become and grow and bloom, right? It does its thing when given the right conditions. That's what it's reminding me of as you speak. And is that how you would describe the experience for yourself?
Yeah, and there's a little thing people might notice in what you and I have said too, which is like there's a potential for a really big shift in identity, which is that initially we are Forrest or Corissa or whoever we might be identified as listening to this podcast, and we're lying down and going deep into receptivity and into stillness, and light's coming into us. And like you said, like you didn't initially know it was your soul, or you didn't actually know that light was us. But then it turns out it's like, whoa, we are this being of light. We are this light that's coming down into forest and doing this bucketing out and clearing things up and coming into reality through whatever we call forest. Like that's actually like all of a sudden there's an identity shift of like, oh, now forest is an object in the experience of the light, which is really
Mm-hmm.
who.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it's like, well, now there is this sense of action is happening. I mean, I really like the word allowing. It resonates with me deeply. But there's a shift there. There's a subject object shift from I was previously forest and the light was coming into me to now I'm actually the light that's coming into forest, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. A totally different experience.
Totally different experience.
Yeah. I've been in tears over that experience more recently. I think it's been a profound uh, remembering and just bringing me to tears. Like, this is so, yeah, they're not sad tears. They're not even happy tears. They're just like this awe filled tears. Yeah. Before we wrap it up today, I know that you now do work and help clients and help people. I don't know if you even call them clients or tell us a little bit more about how you practically, with the practicality of your knowing of this, of what you just shared and what we've talked about. What's the practicality of it in life, and how do you apply it to the work you're doing now?
Yeah. There's so part of the, it's like once we have these awakening processes, right? Like synchronicity becomes normalized, right? It's like previously we have some crazy synchronistic serendipitous experience, and it's like, oh my god, I can't believe that happened. And then when we stabilize, in this, it's like, oh, that's actually the normal, right? So it's like this. I'm in the process right now of I'm calling it miracle matchmaking and systemizing synchronicity. So I've
Mm,
got this big passion for, like, if we can all connect to what's most essential in us and be in relationship with each other from what's most essential, can we have synchronistic, serendipitous miracle moments with a way that's more harmonized and has a bit of a rhythm to it? And
mhm,
for me, this is giving way to the new economy, the new way of being on planet Earth. I have a really big passion for economics and markets and money and these things, because if we solve money from the new way of being, my sense is everything else is going to take care of itself. That's like a such a has so much of a gravity to it in this
mhm.
reality.
Yeah.
Um, and so I spend a lot of time supporting conscious entrepreneurs. I'm currently in Costa Rica, facilitating retreats for conscious entrepreneurs, and working with a retreat center here, helping them uh, grow their business and offerings. And um, I say that, and I also want to be clear that the work I do is really in the unmanifest. Like, yes, there are lead generation. I have a background in startups, so I know how to do the lead generation and company culture and these things, but it all comes from a different place. It comes from the unseen worlds and working with more nuanced aspects of reality, and how does awareness want to unfold through mind and matter and form in a
Yeah.
business in a way that serves creating the most good for the most number of people and the flourishing of all life and planet Earth right
Mm.
now. So um, I'm doing this thing because I'm like, oh, this is a lot of words. I what I'll say is, if, in terms of working with me, what typically happens is somebody connects with me and they go, "Hey, I really deeply resonate with you, and I want to work with you." There's like a knowing, right?
Mm.
Like there's usually some kind of somatic, almost like a jump. Like, I really am lighting up. Uh, People might start like sweating, or like there's a lot of energy running through the system. It's like, okay, like I
Well,
want.
I make people sweat. There's your tagline.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we're talking about the light coming into us, and there is a purification process that happens. It's
Yeah.
like,
A burning
when the
up.
stuff that's not the light comes out, we start coughing and sweating, and there's all kinds of ways that we can detox and purify totally. So, but yeah, there's typically, like, if anyone's listening to this and you have like a knowing inside of you, a deep down, like, I need to get in touch with Forrest. I imagine I can be supportive for you with whatever you got going on, whatever context you're in. I help people with romantic relationships, with parenting, with business development, with merging meta models, and um, with creating community, all kinds of things.
Awesome.
If it's a resonant fit for me, and it feels like a full 100% yes for both of us, then I'm in. So um,
Beautiful.
yeah, I don't know if that was useful or not, but
It is. And I love how open you are to it being whatever's meant to be with the person, that individual, or that group of individuals. Let's say if it's a company, whatever is meant to be with them is what will best be brought forth and delivered, and how, and in how you work, rather than I have package A, B, and C. And
yeah.
this is what I bring to you, person or company, right? I mean, not that there's anything wrong with packages, but it's just what you're talking about, which is working on a quantum level. It is not delivered, or what you deliver is not delivered in a tied up little bow, or that you could even talk about at the beginning, right? It's got to unfold. It's going to become what it is, it sounds like. through the synergy with that person. And it can be sometimes, um, you don't know what the outcome is yet, because the soup hasn't been made yet, right? It's kind of like we got to bring the ingredients together and then
Yeah,
make the soup together.
totally. And it's, it's like oftentimes, oftentimes the things we think we want is not what we actually want deep down. And so, I have clients who are making 200% of the amount of money when we met, right? Like, or, um, and are also working half as much,
Hmm.
right? So it's like maybe I would have said I want to 10x my income, but I didn't actually realize that's not what I want. I maybe doubling my income, but if I could double my income and work half the time, that would be way better than 10xing my income and working double the time, right? It's like
Yeah.
we think this is a really big part of my work is going from what we call the symbolic, what I call the symbolic. So like I want this girlfriend, or I want this car, or I want this amount of money, like whatever that is. All of that's beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that. And when we get down to what the non symbolic is underneath that, and I don't know if these terms are landing with folks, but what it means is getting to what we actually care about underneath the projection. And everybody
Yeah.
knows this. You could get like, it's not about the symbol. There's a chance that you could get a Ferrari tomorrow and it would actually make you really happy. There's a chance if it's a non symbolic symbol. But there's also a chance you could get a Ferrari tomorrow and have no benefit to your life whatsoever. You could be like, wow, I worked so hard for 20 years to save up enough money to get this supercar, and it's totally meaningless. And so, what we
Hmm.
want to do in our life is discover what is it that's at the core? What is it that's most essential, and tend to that natural, organic, evolutionary unfolding of non symbolic consciousness. And from there, everything takes care of itself. When we really connect to that, what's most essential in us, and learn how to breathe and nurture it and let go of everything that's not that, an entire new reality comes online for us. And it's a reflection of what's most essential in us. So we turns out we deeply enjoy whatever forms that takes.
Hmm.
Without this is what I mean. The distinction between that versus a conscious, intention based, future oriented manifestation. I'm going to manifest $10 million by X date. No, no, no. It's a totally different game. It's an
Yeah.
entirely different game to play. And I'm not saying one's
Hmm.
better than the other, but it's like at some point, if you're really good at manifestation, you'll manifest what you want several times over. And then you realize, well, I'm always living for a future that's promised to be better than the moment I'm living in. And actually, this moment right here, right now is better than anything I ever could have fathomed. So, what if I can open up and receive more of the beauty and love and wonder that's already available here in this moment? And then life
Yeah.
just continues to get juicier and fatter and plumper and more full and whole and amazing. And it's just an entirely different way of walking through the world and experiencing reality. So,
Hmm. Yes. Make the now the juiciest it can be, the most wonderful and receptive and magical place that it can be, that this now moment. I've so enjoyed our now moment. And for the listeners, I hope that they've dropped in more deeply to their true nature. I will predict that they have through this conversation. I will share any links that you want to share out to people in the show notes. Thank you so much, Forrest, for joining us. This has been such a pleasure.
appreciate you so much. Thanks for having me. And thanks everybody for being here with us.